First at 9 this Saturday, the 3rd of May 2025. Local authority race. All election campaigning and propaganda activities to end at midnight. Election observers urge eligible voters to exercise their right to franchise. Intel on terror suspect. Chennai flight searched in Sri Lanka for Indian terror suspect. Pahalgam fallout. Pakistan test fires ballistic missile as India bans imports from Pakistan amid escalating tensions over deadly attack on tourists in Kashmir. Historic re-election. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese wins a second 3-year term, becoming the first Australian Premier to win a second consecutive term in 21 years.
Cinec Campus Open Day, May masa 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cinec Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. I'm Derana, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story. A detailed search was carried out at the Bandaranaike International Airport today, following a tip-off from Indian authorities that a suspect wanted in India was on board a Sri Lankan Airlines flight from Chennai to Colombo. Indian media reported that the search came after intelligence information indicated 6 suspects involved in the Pahalgam terror attack were on board the flight. However, no reports of suspected individuals or objects were found after the thorough search.
The Indian government is carrying large-scale operations in search of perpetrators of the Pahalgam attack that left at least 26 tourists dead and many others wounded, when terrorists opened fire in a scenic meadow near the resort town of Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir in India. Following the deadly attack, tensions have escalated between India and Pakistan as India accused Pakistan of being directly involved in the attack. Although the Indian government has detained some 1,500 suspects for questioning, Indian media yesterday reported that the terrorists were still at large. With intelligence on a terror suspect travelling to Colombo, a detailed security search was carried out at the Bandaranaike International Airport around midday, following a tip-off that a suspect wanted in India was on board a Sri Lankan Airlines flight. Indian media reported that the search was based on a tip that 6 suspects involved in the Pahalgam terror attack were on board the flight. Issuing a statement later, Sri Lankan Airlines announced that flight UL 122, which arrived in Colombo from Chennai, was subjected to a comprehensive security search upon arrival. The statement clarified that the operation was carried out in coordination with local authorities following an alert from the Chennai Area Control Centre. Sri Lanka Air Force confirmed that its officials and the bomb disposal squadron were deployed to the airport. However, no reports of any suspected individuals or objects were found after thorough search. When contacted by Derana, Deputy Minister of Defence Arun Jayasekara stated that no suspected persons were reported to have arrived in Sri Lanka. The aircraft that was subjected to search was scheduled to fly next to Singapore from Colombo. Sri Lankan Airlines stated that the flight UL 308 to Singapore was delayed, resulting from the search. In the wake of the tragic Pahalgam attack on the 22nd of April 2025, which claimed the lives of 26 Hindu tourists, India announced a series of sweeping punitive measures against Pakistan, halting all imports, suspending mail services and denying port access to Pakistani vessels with immediate effect. Pakistan too launched training for a surface-to-surface missile system. A notification issued by the Directorate General of Foreign Trade of India yesterday and now incorporated into the Foreign Trade Policy of 2023 stated that the direct or indirect import or transit of all goods from Pakistan, whether or not freely importable or otherwise permitted, shall be prohibited with immediate effect until further orders. The Department of Posts has simultaneously suspended the exchange of all categories of mail and parcels from Pakistan via air and land routes. India has also barred ships bearing the Pakistani flag from docking at any Indian port. In the meantime, Pakistan's military today announced that it carried out a training launch of a surface-to-surface missile system with a range of 450 kilometers. Meanwhile, the Indian Air Force yesterday carried out a land and go drill on a specially constructed 3.5-kilometer stretch of the under-construction Ganga Expressway in Shahjahanpur district of the Uttar Pradesh, marking a significant milestone in the country's defence preparedness. What sets the expressway stretch apart is its unique capability to facilitate both day and night landings of fighter jets, making it the first such airstrip in India. Meanwhile, the United States has stepped up pressure on India and Pakistan to avoid conflict in Kashmir. US Vice President J.D. Vance said that Washington hopes Pakistan will help hunt down the militants behind the attack who are based in Pakistan-controlled territory. And Vance urged India, which has accused Pakistan of being involved in the attack, to act with restraint so tensions do not explode into a war between the nuclear-armed neighbours.
With 2 days remaining for Sri Lanka's local government election, scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 6th of May, over 13,000 polling centres have been set up across the island, covering all local government councils. Meanwhile, Executive Director of the People's Action for Free and Fair Elections, Rohana Hettiarachchi, urged all eligible voters to exercise their right to franchise. Over 72,000 candidates are vying for 339 local government bodies in the May 6th local government election. With just 3 days away for polls, the Election Commission confirmed that 13,759 polling centres have been established across the island. During the 24 hours ending 6 a.m. today, Sri Lanka police said 5 candidates were apprehended in relation to election law violations during campaigning. This brings the number of candidates arrested for violating election laws to a total of 43. Among the 43 arrested, 2 candidates were nabbed for the possession of narcotics and illicit liquor. In the meantime, the silent period during which all political parties and independent groups contesting the election are to refrain from conducting any election-related campaigning or propaganda activities is set to commence at midnight. Police personnel have been deployed across the island to take down campaign posters on public areas. Speaking to Ada Derana, Executive Director of the People's Action for Free and Fair Elections, Rohana Hettiarachchi, urged the general public to exercise the right to franchise.
17 million voters are eligible to franchise their right on 13,000 polling stations. We are prepared to monitor the upcoming local elections. We will be deploying nearly 3,000 observers across the country. Around 200 mobile teams will be there in the ground on the elections day. So we wish to appeal to the public to mark their ballot. Encourage you to take your national ID card or valid identification document. Without poll card, you can mark your ballot. Poll card is just an invitation. This time you don't have a preferential voting. You have to just mark your vote. So you just cross your mark in front of the political party or independent group which you are planning to vote. But don't mark any other symbol in your ballot paper, then it will be spoiled.
Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya asserts that the recent death of a student of the Sabaragama University brings to light deep-rooted systematic inadequacies within Sri Lanka's education system. Speaking at a public gathering in Homagama, the Premier emphasised the necessity of new policies to address these pressing issues.
A public gathering of the National People's Power in view of the impending local government elections was held recently in Homagama under the patronage of Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya.
සබරගමුව විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ ශිෂ්‍යයෙක්ගේ මරණයක් ගැනත් අපිට ආරංචි වෙනවා. ඛේදවාචක.
The death of a student from the Sabaragama University was reported recently. It is a tragedy. Separate investigations are being conducted by the ministry and police. What do these investigations reveal? The collapse within educational institutions and the isolation of these children. We must change this. However, these changes cannot be made in a couple of days. We must implement these changes by formulating education policies, training teachers in line with them, and finding necessary provisions. Students lack hostels and other facilities. Therefore, is it a wonder that they are under stress? Therefore, we must make these changes. Political opponents are no longer a challenge to us. You must have seen how SJB's May Day rally unfolded. We saw how some of their leaders, including trade union leaders, pleaded with participants not to leave. These same individuals are preparing to take over the presidency party by this December. Before taking over the country, they must first properly organize a meeting. Most Pradeshiya Sabhas are labelled dens of thieves. What is the revenue of this Pradeshiya Sabha? 1.2 billion rupees. However, has it rendered services worth 1.2 billion rupees in the past? It is pointless to ask you what has been done for this area with the tax and revenue collected. Most of that revenue went into the hands of corrupt politicians, not the citizens who voted for them. We must change that.
මේක අපි වෙනස් කරන්න ඕනේ.
Now, leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa vows that the Samagi Jana Balawegaya will render exemplary public service through SJP-led local councils after securing victory in a majority of local government authorities at the impending elections. Addressing an SJP public meeting in Kirindivela, the opposition leader accused the government of not taking at least the initial steps towards fulfilling the promises it made before the presidential and parliamentary elections. A public meeting of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya in view of the local government elections was held in Kirindivela under the patronage of party leader of the opposition Sajith Premadasa.
ගමේ බලය නගරේ බලය තීන්දුව කරන මේ මැතිවරණයේදී අපි හිතලා බලන්නට ඕන ජනාධිපතිවරණයේදී මහ මැතිවරණයේදී ජනතාව ලබා දුන්නු ජනවරම අනුර කුමාර දිසානායක ජනාධිපතිවරයා ඇතුළු ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණේ රජය ඒ ජනවරමට අනුව කටයුතු කරලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ ඉදිරිපත් කරපු පොරොන්දු මාලාව මහ පොළොවේ සත්‍යයක් කිරීම සඳහා අඩුම ගානේ ඒ පොරොන්දු වලට ආරම්භක පියවරක් හරි අරගෙන තිබෙනවා. ඇයි මේ වගේ බොරු පොරොන්දු ලබා දුන්නේ? දැන් කියනවා ගමේ බලයක් දෙන්න, නගරේ බලයක් දෙන්න. එළවෙන පළාත් පාලන මැතිවරණයේදී අති විශාල බහුතරයක් පළාත් පාලන ආයතන ජයග්‍රහණය කරන්නේ සමගි ජන බලවේගයේ බව මම කියන්න කැමතියි. අපේ ජනතා සේවාව සමගි ජන බලවේගයේ සභා තුලින් අලුත් වැඩපිළිවෙලක් සකස් කරලා සුපුරුදු රාමුවෙන් පිටපන සම්පත් සොයා ආධාර ලබාගෙන අපි අපේ යුතුයකම අපේ සභා හරහා රටේ ජනතාවට ඉටු කරනවායි කියන එක මම මේ අවස්ථාවේ ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
Leader of the Sarvajana Balaya parliamentarian Dilip Javira claims that all local government institutions which the Sarvajana Balaya secures victory over in the upcoming local government election will be efficient, transparent and free of corruption. Addressing a public meeting of the Sarvajana Balaya in Vattala today, Javira requested that the public cast their vote for Sarvajana Balaya in the upcoming elections to send a message to the President and the government who have been working against the goals and expectations of the people.
Another public meeting of the Sarvajana Balaya in view of the upcoming local government elections was held today in Vattala under the patronage of party leader parliamentarian Dilip Javira.
තවත් දින කීපයකින් එළඹෙන 6 වෙනිදා ඔබගේ ඒ වටිනා සර්ව ජන ඡන්දය සටහන් කිරීමට නියමිතයි. මේ ඡන්දය ඔබ මෙවර සටහන් කරන්නේ වෙනත් කිසිදු මැතිවරණයකදී නොතිබුණු වටිනා ප්‍රකාශනයක් ජාතිය ඉදිරියේ තබන්නට. මෙවර ඔබ සටහන් කරන එම ඡන්දය අපේ රටේ අනාගතය ගෙන යන දිශාව තීරණය කරනු ඇති. මේ ජනාධිපතිතුමා අද කටයුතු කරනවා සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ජනතා පරමාර්ථයන් අභිලාෂයන් අපේක්ෂාවන් වලට එරෙහිව. ඉතින් මේ යන වැඩපිළිවෙල ජනතාව අනුමත කරන්නේ නැහැ කියලා පෙන්වන්නට මේ 6 වෙනිදාට ඔබට පුළුවන් ඔබේ කතිරය පදක්කම ඉදිරියේ සටහන් කරලා ඔය කියන බොරු ඔක්කොම අපි තවදුරටත් අනුමත කරන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක ඔවුන්ට පෙන්වා දෙන්නට. අපේ මව්බිම වෙනුවෙන් අපේ රටේ අනාගතය වෙනුවෙන් නූපන් දරුවන් වෙනුවෙන් අපි ඔබට ශපථ වෙනවා. අපි ලබා ගන්නා ඕනෑම පළාත් පාලන ආයතනයක බලයක් භාවිතා වන්නේ සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම අදූෂිතව හා පාරදර්ශභාවයෙන් යුතුව කාටත් සෙනෙහස එක වගේ ලැබෙන ගමේ සාම්ප්‍රදායිකව සිදුවුණු ওই සිවුළු දේවල් වඩාත් කාර්යක්ෂමව වෙනදට වැඩිය හොඳින් වෙන පරිසරයක් නිර්මාණය කරන්න.
With that, here's a look at more views expressed by politicians over the rise of ragging incidents in state universities and the political state of the country.
අද නවකවදේ ගැන කතා කරන විශ්වවිද්‍යාලේ කිසිම සැකයක් නැහැ. මේ රටේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල පද්ධතියේ පහුගිය අවුරුදු 3 නවකවදේ පවත්වාගෙන ගියා නම් ඒ සඳහා මූලික වග කියන්න ඕන ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණත් එක්ක සම්බන්ධ වෙලා කටයුතු කරපු ශිෂ්‍ය සංවිධානය. අද ශිෂ්‍යෝ මැරෙනව නම් සියදිවි නහගන්නව නම් ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණ ජාතික ජන බලවේගයේ වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී සිටිය කඩේ ගිය විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ආචාර්යවරුත් ඒකට වග කියන්න ඕන පැහැදිලි ලෙසම.
අධිවේග මාර්ගයේ ජනතා විමුක්ති පෙරමුණේ මැදිනේට එන බස් රථ විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් නවත්තලා ඒකේ ඉන්න ජනතාව කෑම බීම රැගෙන විවේක ගන්න දර්ශන අපි දැක්කා සමාජ මාධ්‍ය තුල. දැන් ඒකට ඉඩ දීපු පොලිස් නිලධාරීන්ට විරුද්ධව ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගන්නවයි කියලා අද පුවත්පත්වල පළ වෙලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒ අහිංසක රාළහාමිලගේ වැඩ තහනම් කරනවයි කියන එක තමයි ඔය කියන්නේ. ඒ බස් රථ රියදුරන්ට මාලිමාවේ සංවිධායකයන්ට විරුද්ධව ක්‍රියාමාර්ග නැහැ.
ජෙවිප් එකේ මන්ත්‍රීවරු කියන අපි අනිත් අය වගේනේ අපි මහ ජනතාව එක්ක මේ ඉදිරියට ආවේ කියලා. ඒ කියන්නේ මන්ත්‍රීත් බස් එකේ හයිවේ එකේ නවත්තලා තියෙනකොට. එහෙමනම් ඉස්සෙල්ලා යාවත් තරංගුඩ ගන්න ඕනේ. පොලිසිය අහිංසක මිනිස්සෙක් ඩියුටි ඉන්න මිනිස්සෙක්ගේ වැඩ තහනම් කරන්න කලින් සංවිධානාත්මක අපරාධ වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ කොළොන්නාවේ අපි ඩෑන් ප්‍රේසත් පහුගිය දවස්වල ඝාතනය වුණා. අපේක්ෂකෙක් පොලිස් පොතේ පොලිසියෙන් කියනවා වගේ ආරක්ෂාව සපය ගන්නයි කියලා. ඒ තැනට මේරට වට්ටලා තියෙන්නේ.
සහතික කරලා කියනවා ජාතික ජනබලයේ තව වසර එකමාරක් ඇතුළත අපරාධ රැල්ලත් අවසන් කරනවා. කුඩු රැල්ලත් අවසන් කරනවා. ඒකට අපිට කාලය දෙන්න. මොකද ඒ තරම් අපරාධ කිඳා බහැලා තියෙන්නේ. එහෙම තත්ත්වයක් තියෙද්දි ඒක අවසන් කරන එක රැයකින් කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඇලඩින්ගේ පුදුම පහන වගේ. ඒකට 100,000 ගුණයකින් කැමති එකම දේශපාලන ව්‍යාපාරය ජාතික ජනබලවේගයේ මතක තියාගන්න.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
Welcome back. President Anura Kumara Dissanayake departed for Vietnam this evening, commencing his official state visit to Vietnam. President Dissanayake undertakes the 3-day state visit at the invitation of the President of Vietnam. The President Office said the visit marks the celebration of 55 years of diplomatic relations between Sri Lanka and Vietnam and is expected to further strengthen the long-standing bilateral ties between the two nations. President Dissanayake will hold official discussions with the President and Prime Minister of Vietnam during the visit. He is also scheduled to meet with senior dignitaries, including the General Secretary of the Communist Party. President Dissanayake will also participate as the chief guest at the United Nations Day of Vesak celebrations scheduled to commence on May 6th in Ho Chi Minh City, where he will deliver the keynote address. Several memoranda of understanding and agreements are expected to be signed during the visit, and discussions will be held with the Vietnamese business community to explore avenues for enhanced cooperation. Minister for Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijitha Herath, along with a delegation of senior government officials, accompanied President Dissanayake. Now in your business news, Chief Economic Policy Advisor at the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Shiran Fernando, warned that escalating trade tensions driven by US tariffs should slow Sri Lanka's growth prospects as global economic dynamics are being reshaped. He made this remark speaking at a forum organized by the Sri Lanka-USA Business Council of the Colombo Chamber of Commerce recently.
A high-level forum themed Understanding the Impact of New U.S. Import Tariffs, organized by the Sri Lanka-USA Business Council of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, was held recently in Colombo.
The first thing is, of course, a slowdown in economic growth, because whether you have a 90-day pause, whether it's going to be 10%, 20%, 30%, what this all means is uncertainty. And uncertainty is not good for business. It's not good for consumer confidence. The higher tariff will impact even a lot of their local businesses, depending on imports as well. So there's going to be knock-on price increases as well. So what this means is the uncertainty plus a higher tariff environment could see a slowdown in economic activity, growth, orders, all of that. And you can see that reflected in the IMF forecasts, which were just released last week, where overall global growth was reduced by 0.5%. There is going to be some level of slowdown in trade volume created by the uncertainty. So what can the private sector do in this scenario? And I think this is just a depiction of 3 potential scenarios to think through and almost monitor on a weekly basis, which is de-escalate and negotiate. That's one scenario. In that scenario, Sri Lanka is also able to negotiate quite successfully. But even in this scenario, there will be slowdown in global growth, and maybe we could see an overall 5 to 10% maybe drop in our exports as well. And the oil relief can be limited. So right now, this week, I would say we are in the de-escalate and negotiate. Here, the slowdown in global growth and demand for our exports is much more steeper. And in this scenario, even oil could fall much further. So that might be a potential upside for us. If oil, for example, falls under $60 a barrel, that might give some level of relief.
24% approximately of our exports go to US. So for us in Sri Lanka, almost 2.9 billion accounts from the US. Sri Lanka seems to be the highest and the most disadvantaged compared to the other regions. So India, while the other countries are seeing a disadvantage, is making a benefit out of it. So somebody's loss is somebody else's gain, and depends on how you negotiate. There are moves towards other areas, other jurisdictions where the tariffs could be comparatively lower. So what is happening to the global container and shipping volumes? Again, predicted at least a 1% decline. So that's going to have a direct impact on our transshipment. That is where we get most of our income from the port-related activities as well. So again, a hit for Sri Lanka. But what really will matter at the end of the day is your bilateral negotiations. Whether we like it or not, we will have to find out what it is that the US would want from us and see how we can come to an agreement. In the short run, it will only be doom and gloom. In the long run, shifts will happen. But even though we see that there will be new markets because of this, there will be recession that will be coming across, meaning everybody's buying power will be curtailed. While we can re-strategize, shift to new countries, shift to new destinations, shift from our concentration from US to somewhere else, this is not something practically that we can do overnight. So it all boils down at this moment to how well we can negotiate. So if we don't get our act right in terms of becoming conducive for investments, showcasing that we have other benefits to offer, but we need to make sure that we are conducive for investment. If we're going to be that much more expensive, 44%, what else do we have to offer? We will have to rethink, re-strategize in whatever policies we've been talking about in terms of simplification, making ease of doing business easier in Sri Lanka, which is very complicated at the moment. We need to get those policies in motion. So the US does have what they call US trade law. There are provisions where the president can take special decisions in terms of certain goods and services. So those specific points are probably what we need to focus on when we make negotiations or discussions with the government of the US. So this is the time that we need to lobby and make sure we open the right channels of discussion and approach the government.
Wall Street has clawed back losses incurred after President Donald Trump imposed global tariffs a month ago, capping the longest winning streak in 2 decades for US stocks. Shares saw the gains for 9th day in a row for the first time since 2004 after a better-than-expected jobs report and rising hope of US-China trade talks. Major US indexes were all up when the market closed. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq had both risen 15%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average increased 14%. The tech sector made the biggest gains, with Microsoft and Nvidia growing more than 2%. The report came in as the Department of Labor said that US employers had added 177,000 new jobs in April. For some analysts, the job figures tamped down recession fears in the wake of Commerce Department data this week, showing a contraction in the US economy for the first time in 3 years. Welcome back. The Colombo Chief Magistrates Court today granted permission to the Western South Crime Division to detain and question the suspected shooter in the murder of political activist Dan Prasad for 48 hours. Meanwhile, another suspect who aided and abetted the murder was arrested by police. Investigations into the incident are underway under the supervision of the Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of the Western Province, Gayanga Marapana. On the 22nd of April, political activist Dan Prasad was gunned down at the Laksada Sevana housing complex in Kolonava. Prior investigations revealed information suggesting a connection between a father-son duo relation to Prasad's murder, who is also under suspicion to have committed the murder of Dan Prasad's brother in 2022. Now in your foreign news, Britain's Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's Labour Party secured victory in the federal election, becoming the first Australian Prime Minister to win a second consecutive three-year term in 21 years. Opposition leader Peter Dutton conceded defeat in today's election, recognising the Premier's election success, an historic occasion for the Labour Party.
The Australian federal election commenced today, with voting taking place across all states and territories to elect members of the 48th Parliament of Australia, affirming earlier predictions. All 150 seats in the House of Representatives and 40 of the 76 seats in the Senate are contested. Albanese has become the first Australian Prime Minister to win a second consecutive three-year term in 21 years and is set to return to lead the 48th Parliament of Australia. Meanwhile, opposition leader and Liberal Party leader Peter Dutton lost his seat in dramatic fashion, throwing the Liberal National Coalition into turmoil. Conceding defeat, Dutton congratulated Premier Albanese, recognising his re-election as historic, and took full responsibility for defeat. The Australian Electoral Commission's projections gave Albanese's ruling centre-left Labour Party 70 seats and the Conservative Opposition Coalition 24 seats in the 150-seat House of Representatives, the lower chamber where parties need a majority to form the government. Unaligned minor parties and independent candidates appeared likely to win 13 seats.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of Other Derana First at 9. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit otherderana.lk.